You'll regret the day you tried to take my house while I had a rifle in my hands defending this country. I growled into the satellite phone, my voice barely controlled. The laughter on the other end stopped abruptly. That's right, Linda, I know everything. My name is Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, and at 34, I'd already served 12 years in the United States Army. I'd survived 2 tours in Afghanistan, earned a Bronze Star for valor, and maintained perfect credit despite the chaos of military life. What I hadn't survived was the betrayal of my own family while defending their freedom. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The call came at 0300 hours local time. I was stationed at Camp Victory in Djibouti, 6 months into a 9-month deployment, when my neighbor Rachel sent the email that changed everything. The subject line read, "Urgent, strange activity at your house." Attached were video clips from the security system I'd installed before deploying, cameras my in-laws never knew existed. I clicked play on the first video, my heart pounding. There was my mother-in-law, Linda Peterson, showing a real estate agent through my living room. The audio was crystal clear. "We have power of attorney while he's deployed. Of course we can sell. He won't even know until it's done." The timestamp showed this happened 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks they'd been plotting while I stood guard duty in 120-degree heat. My father-in-law, Robert, appeared in the frame, pointing at my flat-screen TV. "And we keep everything inside, right? The furniture, electronics, all of it?" The agent nodded. "Standard foreclosure terms. Once he defaults on the mortgage, which you've assured me he will, everything becomes bank property. Then you buy it back at auction for pennies on the dollar." I had to pause the video, my hands shaking with rage. Default on my mortgage. I'd set up automatic payments before deployment, triple-checked with my bank. Every payment had cleared in time. What had they done? The next clip was worse. Linda sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open in front of her. She was on the phone with someone, and I recognized the hold music of my mortgage company. "Yes, I'm his mother. I need to cancel the automatic payments. He asked me to handle his finances while he's away." Her voice was sickly sweet, nothing like the woman who told me I wasn't good enough for her daughter 3 days before our wedding. I fast-forwarded through more clips, Robert using my garage tools, boxing up my military memorabilia. Linda going through my filing cabinet, pulling out documents, both of them meeting with different real estate agents, lawyers, even a locksmith. The scope of their plan was breathtaking in its audacity, but it was the final video that broke something inside me. Linda and Robert sat on my back porch with my wife, Jessica, their precious daughter, who'd filed for divorce the day after I deployed. "I always said he wasn't stable," Linda cooed, stroking Jessica's hair. "All those deployments, the PTSD. Once we prove he's mentally unfit, the house is yours, sweetheart. And with his life insurance policy, you'll be set for life." Life insurance. They weren't just trying to steal my house. They were hoping I wouldn't come back at all. Before that moment, I'd been a different man. I'd grown up in South Phoenix, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. The army had been my ticket out, my path to stability and purpose. I'd met Jessica at Fort Bragg during advanced infantry training. She was a civilian contractor, beautiful and sophisticated in a way that made me feel like I'd finally made it out of the neighborhood. Her parents had disapproved from day one. I was too brown, too poor, too rough around the edges for their precious daughter. But Jessica had rebelled, and we'd married quickly in a courthouse ceremony before my first deployment. For 6 years, I'd tried to prove myself worthy. I'd bought the house in Scottsdale with my re-enlistment bonus and combat pay, a 4-bedroom ranch style, with a pool and mountain views. It cost $425,000, every penny earned through blood and sweat, in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. The house was my pride, my proof that I'd made something of myself. I'd spent every leave improving it, installing hardwood floors, updating the kitchen, landscaping the yard. Jessica had seemed happy, or at least content. Her parents had grudgingly accepted our marriage, though Linda never missed a chance to mention how Jessica could have married that dentist from their country club. Looking back, the signs had been there. Jessica's increasing distance during my second deployment, her parents' sudden interest in our finances, the way she'd insisted I give her power of attorney before this deployment for emergencies. I'd trusted her, trusted them, because that's what families did, right? I sat in my bunk, the tablet still glowing with those damning videos, and felt something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. They'd made 3 critical mistakes. First, they'd underestimated me. Second, they'd forgotten that a soldier always has contingency plans. And third, they had no idea I'd installed a $2,000 security system with cloud backup before leaving, hidden. Cameras in every room, motion sensors, audio recording, everything uploaded automatically to a secure server. I pulled out my personal laptop and logged into my bank account. Sure enough, the automatic payments had been cancelled. I was 2 months behind on my mortgage. But they'd made another mistake. Military members have protections under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. No foreclosure proceedings can begin while we're on active duty. I immediately reinstated the payments and contacted my bank's military affairs department. Next, I emailed my JAG officer, Captain Sarah Mendoza. I'd known her since basic training, and she'd helped other soldiers with civil matters. I attached the most damning video clips and outlined the situation. Her response came within an hour. This is attempted fraud, identity theft, and violation of SCRA. I'm contacting the DA's office. Do not confront them yet. We need to document everything. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I spent the next 48 hours methodically gathering evidence. I downloaded every second of security footage from the past 6 months. I obtained copies of my bank statements showing the cancelled payments. I even found email exchanges between Linda and Jessica discussing their plan, foolishly sent from my own computer while Linda was pretending to be me. The final piece came from an unexpected source. My neighbor Rachel, a retired police detective, had been suspicious of the increased activity at my house. She'd taken photos of every visitor, noted license plates, and even followed Linda to a meeting with a foreclosure specialist. Rachel had emailed everything to me with a simple note. "Something's not right. Hope you're safe." I sat back in my chair, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, and made my decision. I wouldn't just protect my house. I would dismantle their entire scheme so thoroughly that they'd never try this with another service member again. But I had to be smart. I had to be patient. I had 3 months left on my deployment, 3 months to plan, while they thought they were winning. First, I needed to secure my position. I contacted Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, my commanding officer, and requested emergency leave for family issues. He reviewed the evidence I presented and not only approved my leave, but fast-tracked it. "You'll be on a plane in 72 hours, he said. "And Torres? Give them hell." Next, I set up a war room of sorts on my laptop. I created spreadsheets tracking every unauthorized transaction, every forged document, every meeting they'd had. I contacted a civilian attorney specializing in military family law and retained his services. I also reached out to the local police department in Scottsdale and filed a preliminary report. But the masterstroke came when I remembered something. Jessica had said during our last argument before deployment, "Your paranoia is exhausting, Michael, always preparing for disasters that never happen." She'd been referring to my habit of keeping detailed records of everything, a trait I'd developed after watching too many soldiers get screwed over by the system. I logged into my cloud storage and found exactly what I needed. A video I'd recorded of myself the day before deployment, stating clearly that I was of sound mind and body, that I was not giving anyone permission to sell my house or access my finances beyond the specific powers outlined in the POA. I'd even had it notarized at the base legal office. At the time, it had seemed like overkill. Now, it was my ace in the hole. Word spread quickly through my unit about what was happening. My squad gathered around me in the mess hall as I showed them the videos. These were men and women I'd bled, with people who understood betrayal in ways civilians never could. Sergeant Williams, a divorced father of 3, shook his head in disgust. My ex tried something similar. Took me 2 years to get my kids back. Don't let them get away with this. Torres, Specialist Chen, our unit's tech genius, offered to help with the digital evidence. I've got software that can track their digital footprint, prove they accessed your accounts illegally. We spent an evening tracing their activities online, uncovering a web of deceit that extended to falsified documents and fraudulent loan applications in my name. The most touching support came from Master Sergeant Reynolds, a 20-year veteran who rarely showed emotion. He pulled me aside after formation one morning. Lost my house in '08 while deployed. Different circumstances, but same result. Don't make my mistake. Fight like your life depends on it, because it does. A man without a home is a man without purpose. As my emergency leave date approached, I finalized my strategy. I would return home quietly, gather the final pieces of evidence, and then strike all at once. The element of surprise was crucial. They thought they had 3 more months to complete their plan. They thought I was isolated, unaware, vulnerable. They were wrong on all counts. I packed my bags methodically, including copies of all evidence on encrypted drives. My squad insisted on driving me to the airfield, a show of solidarity that meant more than they knew. As I boarded the C-130 that would take me to Germany and then home, I felt a calm settle over me. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about justice. About standing up for every service member who'd ever been betrayed while serving their country. The flight was long, giving me time to reflect on everything that had led to this moment. I thought about my mother, who'd worked herself to exhaustion to give me a better life. She died 2 years ago, never getting to see the house I'd bought, the life I'd built. I thought about all the promises Jessica had made, how she'd sworn to stand by me through every deployment, every hardship. I pulled out my tablet and watched the security footage again, studying their mannerisms, their casual cruelty. Linda's fake smile as she lied to the bank representative, Robert's greedy eyes as he inventoried my possessions, Jessica's cold indifference as she discussed my potential death like a financial windfall. They'd forgotten something fundamental about soldiers. We're trained to assess threats, to plan operations, to execute with precision. They'd treated me like a mark, an easy target. They were about to learn Why, that was a catastrophic error in judgment. As the plane descended into Dallas for my connecting flight, I received an email from Captain Mendoza. The DA was interested in pursuing charges. The bank had confirmed the fraudulent activity. The real estate agents involved were cooperating with authorities. The pieces were falling into place. I had one more call to make before landing. I dialed my Uncle Carlos, a retired Marine who'd taught me everything about being a man. His voice was gruff when he answered. "Mijijo, what's wrong?" I explained everything, my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. There was a long pause before he spoke. "You remember what I told you before your first deployment?" I did. "Never let them see you coming, and when you strike so hard they never get up again." He chuckled darkly. "Time to show them what a Torres is made of. You need backup, you call me. I've still got connections in Phoenix." I thanked him and ended the call as we touched down. One more flight to Phoenix, then a rental car to Scottsdale. They had no idea I was coming. They had no idea what was about to hit them. But they would learn. They would all learn that you don't steal from a soldier while he's fighting for your freedom. As I walked through the airport, I caught my reflection in a window. I looked older than my 34 years, weathered by sand and sun and stress. But my eyes were clear, focused. I wasn't the naive young man who'd married Jessica 6 years ago. I wasn't the eager-to-please son-in-law who'd tolerated their condescension. I was Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, combat veteran, and I was coming home to wage a different kind of war. The security footage had showed them planning their crime in my kitchen, on my furniture, spending money I'd earned with my blood and sweat. They'd laughed about my potential death, celebrated their cleverness in deceiving the banks, the real estate agents, even the law itself. They'd underestimated not just me, but the entire military justice system designed to protect service members from exactly this kind of betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, my vigilant neighbor. "Strange cars at your house today. Want me to call the police?" I smiled grimly and replied, "Not yet. I'll be there in 3 hours. Keep watching." I had one stop to make before heading home, the storage unit where I'd kept my most valuable possessions before deployment. Inside were my medals, my important documents, and something else, a backup hard drive containing every financial record, every legal document, every piece of evidence I'd collected over 6 years of marriage. I'd learned early in my career to always have redundancies, trust, but verify, document everything. The drive from Phoenix to Scottsdale gave me time to review my plan once more. I would enter my house using the hidden key they didn't know about. I would gather any additional evidence they might have left behind. Then I would wait for them to return from whatever scheme they were plotting today. Wait for them to walk into their own trap. My lawyer had advised me to avoid confrontation, to let law enforcement handle everything, but I needed to see their faces when they realized their plan had failed. I needed them to understand that actions have consequences, that betrayal has a price. As I pulled onto my street, I saw my house in the distance, the xeriscaped yard I'd designed myself, the solar panels I'd installed to cut energy costs, the American flag still flying from the pole I'd mounted. Everything looked normal from the outside, but I knew what corruption lurked within those walls. I parked the rental car 2 blocks away and approached on foot, using the skills I'd learned in reconnaissance training. The afternoon sun was brutal, but I barely noticed. My focus was absolute. As I reached my property line, I saw movement through the front window. They were inside, all 3 of them. Perfect. I slipped around to the back of the house, avoiding the motion sensors I knew were placed near the main entrances. The hidden key was exactly where I'd left it, concealed in a fake sprinkler head I'd modified myself. My hands were steady as I unlocked the back door and entered my own home like a ghost. The house smelled different. Linda's perfume, too sweet and cloying. Robert's cigars, though I'd banned smoking inside, foreign scents in my sanctuary. I moved silently through the laundry room, past the guest bathroom, toward the sound of voices in the living room. "So the closing is scheduled for next week," Linda was saying. "We'll have the cash in hand before he even knows what happened." I positioned myself where I could see them, but they couldn't see me. They were gathered around my dining table, documents spread before them. My documents. My life. "And the life insurance?" Robert asked, shuffling through papers. "That's the real. In prize. With his job, it's got to be at least $1 million. Maybe more with the war clause." They actually laughed at the thought of my death. I felt the rage building, but controlled it. Not yet. I needed more. Jessica spoke next, her voice carrying the slight Valley Girl accent she'd never quite lost. "The lawyer says once we prove he's mentally unstable, I get everything. The house, the insurance, his pension. Mom, you're sure those videos will work?" Videos? This was new. I listened intently. Linda patted a folder. The beauty of modern technology. A few edited clips from his deployment videos, some creative audio work, and we have proof of PTSD-induced paranoia. Dr. Brennan already agreed to testify that he's unfit. Dr. Brennan? The psychiatrist they'd insisted I see after my first deployment. I'd gone to 3 sessions before realizing he was more interested in billing insurance than helping veterans. Now I knew why they'd pushed so hard for those appointments. I'd heard enough. It was time. I stepped into the doorway, my presence filling the frame. "Actually," I said, my voice calm and controlled, "the only one who's going to need a psychiatrist is you, Linda. After you're charged with fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy." The effect was immediate. Jessica screamed. Robert jumped up, knocking over his chair. Linda's face went from smug satisfaction to white-faced terror in an instant. "Michael!" Jessica gasped. "You're not... How did you... get home 3 months early?" I finished for her. "Amazing what happens when you're commanding. Officer sees evidence of family members trying to steal your house while you're deployed." I held up my phone. "By the way, this conversation..." All recorded, again. Robert was the first to recover, his face shifting from shock to false bravado. "Now, son, this isn't what it looks like. We're just helping Jessica with some paperwork." I walked calmly into the room, picked up the folder Linda had been patting, and extracted the doctored videos they'd created. "Helping?" I said, examining the USB drive labeled "Mental Health Evidence." "Is that what you call editing deployment footage to make me look unstable? Is that what you call canceling my mortgage payments?" I played the security video on my phone, their own voices filling the room. "Once he defaults on the mortgage, everything becomes bank property." Linda attempted damage control, her voice shaking. "Michael, sweetheart, you don't understand. We were worried about you. The stress of deployment, we just wanted to make sure Jessica was taken care of." I laughed, a harsh sound that made them flinch. "By hoping I'd die? By planning to steal my house? By trying to have me declared mentally unfit? That's your version of care?" I pulled out a chair and sat down, my movements deliberate and controlled. "Let me tell you what's going to happen now. First, you're going to sit down and listen. Then, you're going to sign some documents. And finally, you're going to leave my House and never come back. They remained frozen until I gestured sharply at the chairs. Sit down. The command voice, honed by years of leadership, brooked no argument. They sat. I opened my laptop and began projecting evidence onto my TV screen. Here's what I know, I began. 6 months ago, before I deployed, you started planning. This. Jessica filed for divorce the day after I left, but kept it secret. You used the power of attorney I gave her to access my accounts. I clicked through screenshots of bank statements, email records, and security footage. Linda, you called. My mortgage company impersonated a family member and cancelled my automatic payments. That's fraud. Robert, you met with real estate agents and tried to arrange a quick sale. Also fraud. Jessica, you conspired with your parents to have me declared mentally unfit using falsified evidence. That's criminal conspiracy. The room was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. I continued methodically, laying out every piece of their plan. You contacted Dr. Brennan and paid him to create a false psychiatric evaluation. I have the wire transfer records. You had documents forged with my signature. I have the originals for comparison. You even tried to change the beneficiary on my life insurance policy. I showed them the email from my insurance company flagging the suspicious request. But here's what you didn't know, I said, leaning forward. The Service Members Civil Relief Act protects active duty military from exactly this kind of fraud. Every bank, every financial institution has protocols to prevent what you try to do. The moment you cancelled those payments, it triggered alerts. In their military protection department, Jessica found her voice. Michael, please, we can work this out. We're still married. I held up a document. Actually, we're not. I had my JAG officer check. You never properly filed those divorce papers. Probably because you needed to stay legally married to claim my benefits if I died. But I filed yesterday. Emergency divorce based on fraud and abandonment. Robert tried intimidation. You can't prove any of this will hold up in court. I smiled coldly. I don't have to. The district attorney's office already has everything. They're particularly interested in the identity theft and wire fraud charges. Federal crimes, by the way. You're looking at 20 years, Robert. The color drained from their faces as the reality set in. I opened another folder, but I'm going to give you a choice. Option 1. I press charges. You face federal prosecution, certain conviction based on the evidence, and significant prison time. Your reputation's destroyed. Your assets seized to pay restitution. Or, Linda whispered, Option 2. You sign these documents. Jessica agrees to an uncontested divorce with no claim to my assets. You all sign affidavits admitting to attempted fraud. You pay restitution for the missed mortgage payments and my legal fees. And you have zero contact with me ever again. What about the house? Jessica asked, a hint of her entitlement still showing. The house? I laughed. The house remains mine, along with everything in it. You get nothing except your personal belongings, which you'll remove under police supervision. This is extortion, Robert blustered. No, I replied calmly. This is mercy. Because what you did to me, what you tried to do, deserves no mercy at all. You targeted a deployed service member. You committed fraud against someone defending your freedom. In some countries, that's treason. The weight of my words settled over them like a shroud. I pulled out the settlement documents my lawyer had prepared. You have 1 hour to decide. Sign, or I call the detective waiting outside. They signed. Of course they signed. Faced with the certainty of prosecution versus the humiliation of admitting defeat, they chose survival. As they gathered their belongings under the watchful eye of Detective Morrison, whom I'd asked to stand by, I felt no satisfaction, only a deep weariness. Linda paused at the door, mascara running down her cheeks. "How did you know? How did you plan all this?" I really looked at her for perhaps the first time. I saw not a mother-in-law, but a small, grasping woman who'd never understood what honor meant. "You never understood what it means to be a soldier, Linda. We plan for every contingency. We protect what's ours. And we never, ever leave our position undefended." The next few weeks were a blur of legal procedures and practical matters. The divorce was finalized, with Jessica receiving only her personal property and the car she'd bought before our marriage. The signed affidavits went to the DA's office, insurance against any future attempts at retaliation. My credit score, temporarily damaged by the missed payments, was restored after the bank acknowledged the fraud attempt. But the hardest part wasn't the legal battle. It was learning to trust again. Every relationship now seemed suspect, every kindness potentially hiding an ulterior motive. I found myself installing more security cameras, changing locks repeatedly, checking my financial statements obsessively. That's when Master Sergeant Reynolds intervened again. He showed up at my door one Saturday morning with coffee and donuts. "Time to talk, Torres," he said, pushing past me into the kitchen. For 3 hours he shared his own story. His wife hadn't tried to steal his house. She'd simply left, taking their children while he was deployed to Iraq. But the betrayal had nearly destroyed him. "Took me 5 years to realize that her actions didn't define me," he said. "Don't let their betrayal become your prison." His words resonated. I began attending a support group for veterans dealing with family trauma. The stories I heard there made my own seem almost mild in comparison. Men and women who'd returned from war to find their entire lives dismantled, their children turned against them, their finances destroyed. One veteran, Maria Gonzalez, had discovered her husband had sold their business and disappeared with her sister while she was stationed in Korea. Another, James Chen, found his parents had remortgaged his house for gambling debts. Each story was different, yet the theme remained the same. Those who should have supported us had instead exploited our absence. But we were all still standing, still fighting, still refusing to let betrayal define us. I threw myself into advocacy, work, helping other service members protect their assets before deployment. I created a checklist, secure power of attorney limitations, set up account alerts, install security systems, document everything. I spoke at pre-deployment briefings, sharing my story as a cautionary tale. 6 months after the confrontation, I received an unexpected email from Jessica's cousin, Emma. She'd heard about what happened and wanted me to know that not everyone in the family supported their actions. She shared how Linda and Robert had always been manipulative, how they'd driven away other family members with their schemes. "Your situation wasn't unique," she wrote, "just the most dramatic." The email contained another revelation. Linda and Robert were facing bankruptcy. Their lifestyle, funded by credit cards and real estate speculation, had finally caught up with them. Without my house to sell, their financial house of cards had collapsed. Jessica had moved back in with them. Her dreams of easy money evaporated. I felt a moment of vindication, then let it go. Their fate was no longer my concern. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I renovated the house again, this time making it truly mine. Every trace of Jessica's influence was removed. I converted one bedroom into a proper home office, another into a gym. The backyard became a meditation garden, a place of peace after the storm. My neighbor Rachel became an unexpected friend. The retired detective had seen enough domestic disasters to recognize the signs early. We started having coffee on Sunday mornings, sharing stories of resilience and recovery. She introduced me to her book club, a group of professionals who welcome me without judgment. Work provided another anchor. My commanding officer, impressed by how I'd handled the situation, recommended me for promotion. The advancement came with new responsibilities, including mentoring younger soldiers on financial and family preparedness. I used my experience to help others avoid similar pitfalls. A year after the incident, I received a letter from Linda. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting. It was rambling, full of self-justification and blame-shifting. She claimed they'd only been trying to protect Jessica, that I'd never been good enough for her daughter. The old accusations, the familiar criticisms. I read it once, then filed it away with the other evidence. Not out of anger, but as a reminder that some people never change, never learn, never grow, and that their limitations need not become mine. The true test came when I met Sarah, a fellow veteran who worked in military finance. She was direct, honest, and had her own scars from a marriage that ended while she was deployed. We took things slowly, both wary of rushing into anything. When I finally told her my story, she listened without judgment, then shared her own. Our first date was at a financial planning seminar. Our second was at a self-defense class. We understood each other's need for security, for preparation, for trust built on verification rather than blind faith. When she saw my security system, she didn't mock my paranoia. She suggested upgrades. 2 years after the incident, I stood in my backyard with Sarah, planning a garden expansion. The house had become a home again, filled with new memories, new possibilities. The security cameras were still there, but I checked them less frequently. The documents were still organized, but they no longer dominated my thoughts. I'd learned that hypervigilance could be both a strength and a weakness. The key was balance, using the lessons learned without letting them consume you. Trust, but verify. Prepare, but don't paranoid. Protect what's yours, but remain open to new connections. The letter from Jessica's lawyer arrived on a Tuesday. She was requesting a meeting, claiming to have information I needed to know. I consulted with my attorney, who advised caution but curiosity. We agreed to meet at his office with everything recorded. Jessica looked different. The entitled confidence was gone, replaced by something harder to define. Regret, resignation. She placed a folder on the table between us. "You should know the whole truth," she said quietly. The folder contained evidence of a longer conspiracy than I'd imagined. Linda and Robert had been planning this before Jessica and I even met. They'd pushed her toward me, specifically because of my military benefits, my steady income, my potential for advancement. The marriage itself had been part of their long-term strategy. But something had changed for Jessica along the way. She'd developed genuine feelings, had tried to resist their pressure. The affair with the personal trainer, fabricated by her parents to create grounds for divorce. The text messages I'd found, written by Linda using Jessica's phone. "I don't expect forgiveness," Jessica said. "I just wanted you to know that not everything was a lie. Not everything was planned." I listened, processed, and then pushed the folder back across the table. "Thank you for the information," I said formally, "but it doesn't change anything. You had choices. You made them." As she left, I felt the last chains of the past fall away. The complete truth didn't absolve her, but it provided closure. I understood now that I hadn't failed as a husband. I'd been targeted by professional manipulators who saw my honor as weakness, my trust as vulnerability. The final document in the folder was a report from a private investigator. Linda and Robert had run this same scheme 3 times before, targeting young professionals with assets to exploit. 2 doctors and a tech entrepreneur had fallen victim to their tactics before me, but I was the first to fight back successfully. I shared this information with the authorities, while the statute of limitations prevented prosecution for the earlier cases. The pattern of behavior strengthened the case against them. The DA's office decided to proceed with charges after all, using the affidavits not as a shield for them, but as evidence of admission. The trial was swift. Faced with overwhelming evidence and multiple victims testifying, Linda and Robert pleaded guilty to reduced charges. They received probation, community service, and were ordered to pay restitution to all victims. More importantly, their names were added to a fraud registry, preventing them from ever working in finance or real estate again. Jessica testified against her parents. A small act of redemption that couldn't undo the damage, but at least pointed toward accountability. She entered therapy, began working with a veteran support organization, trying to make amends in her own way. I watched the proceedings from a distance, no longer emotionally invested in the outcome. Justice had been served, not through vengeance, but through the proper application of law and evidence. The system I'd defended overseas had protected me at home. 5 years have passed since that day I returned early from deployment. The house in Scottsdale stands strong, a testament to resilience and preparation. Sarah and I married last spring in a small ceremony in the backyard, surrounded by fellow veterans and true friends. We've started a non-profit helping service members protect their assets during deployment. The security cameras are still there, but now they capture birthday parties and barbecues instead of betrayal. The filing cabinet still holds important documents, but it's no longer a fortress against deception. Trust has been rebuilt, not blind trust, but informed trust based on demonstrated character and shared values. Sometimes I receive emails from service members who've heard my story. They ask for advice, share their own experiences, seek guidance on protecting themselves and their families. I tell them what I've learned, that strength lies not in isolation, but in community, not in paranoia, but in prudent preparation, not in vengeance, but in justice. The day I removed the last of the extra locks from my doors, Sarah was there. "You sure about this?" she asked. I nodded. The best security system isn't cameras or locks. It's choosing the right people to let into your life. We still have the footage from that confrontation, stored securely but rarely viewed. It serves as a reminder not of betrayal, but of survival, of the moment when preparation met opportunity, when years of training kicked in, not on a battlefield overseas, but in my own living room. The American flag still flies from the pole I installed, but now it represents more than just service to country. It represents the values that saved me: honor, integrity, and the unwavering commitment to protect what matters most. Not just property or assets, but principles and self-respect. Every morning, I watch the sunrise from my back porch, coffee in hand, grateful for the peace earned through vigilance and the strength to rebuild after betrayal. The house stands as more than shelter now. It's a symbol of everything they tried to take and failed, not because of locks or cameras, but because some things, honor, dignity, truth, cannot be stolen, only surrendered. And I never learned how to surrender. The morning after the confrontation, I woke before dawn, old military habits refusing to die. The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if the act of exposing the truth had cleansed it of their poisonous presence. I made coffee in the kitchen where they'd plotted against me, reclaiming the space with each ordinary action. My phone buzzed with a message from Captain Mendoza. DA wants to meet. They're considering additional charges, securities fraud for the life insurance scam. This wasn't just about my house anymore. It was about preventing others from suffering the same fate. I dressed in civilian clothes but maintained military bearing as I drove to the district attorney's office. The building buzzed with activity, lawyers and clerks moving with purpose through marble corridors. Assistant DA Margaret Chen greeted me with a firm handshake and eyes that had seen too much deception. Staff Sergeant Torres, she began, spreading files across her desk. What your in-laws attempted goes beyond simple fraud. They've created a blueprint for targeting deployed service members. We've found evidence of them sharing their methods online, in closed forums where people exchange tips on exploiting military families. The revelation hit hard. They weren't just opportunists, they were predators teaching others to hunt. Margaret continued, we've identified at least 12 other families using similar tactics. Your case could help us dismantle an entire network. I spent hours providing detailed testimony, walking through every step of their plan, every document they'd forged, every lie they'd told. Margaret's team had forensic accountants analyzing the financial trail, digital experts recovering deleted communications, and investigators interviewing the real estate agents and lawyers they'd tried to involve. Your security footage is crucial, Margaret said. Most victims don't have such comprehensive evidence. You've given us a playbook of their tactics. I nodded, remembering the moment I'd decided to install those cameras. Paranoia, Jessica had called it. Prudence, I'd corrected. Now it was justice. The next few weeks became a masterclass in legal strategy. I worked closely with prosecutors, military advocates, and financial crime specialists. We uncovered a sophisticated operation that had been targeting service members for years, always staying just below the radar of major prosecution. Linda and Robert's banking records revealed payments to a consultant who specialized in military, family financial optimization, a euphemism for teaching civilians how to exploit deployment vulnerabilities. This consultant, Marcus Wheeler, had written guides on identifying service members with valuable assets, manipulating power of attorney documents, and creating false evidence of mental instability. The scope was staggering. Wheeler had clients across 15 states, all learning how to prey on those serving overseas. Some targeted property, others benefits. Some even attempted to access classified information for sale. My case had opened a Pandora's box of military family exploitation, but with every revelation came an opportunity. I began working with military leadership to develop comprehensive protection protocols. We created mandatory briefings on financial security, established partnerships with banks to flag suspicious activity, and developed a rapid response team for deployed personnel facing family fraud. The media caught wind of the story. Initially, I declined interviews, preferring to work behind the scenes. But when a national news network aired a segment minimizing the issue as family disputes, I agreed to speak publicly. The interview went viral, not because of sensationalism, but because of its stark honesty. This isn't about one bad marriage or one greedy family, I told the camera. This is about a systemic vulnerability in how we protect those who protect us. When someone deploys, they shouldn't have to worry about being robbed by their own family. The response was overwhelming. Emails poured in from service members sharing similar experiences. A Marine in Okinawa discovered his brother had sold his truck and emptied his savings. An Air Force pilot learned her husband had remortgaged their home to fund his gambling addiction. A Navy SEAL found his identity stolen by cousins who'd opened credit cards in his name. Each story strengthened our case and expanded our mission. What began as protecting my house evolved into a national initiative. We established the Deployment Defense Project, a non-profit providing legal resources, financial monitoring, and emergency intervention for service members facing family fraud. Sarah, my future wife, joined the effort as our financial security director. Her background in military finance made her invaluable. She developed algorithms to detect suspicious account activity, created secure communication channels for deployed personnel, and established partnerships with credit monitoring services. Our first major victory came when Congress held hearings on military family fraud. I testified alongside other victims, presenting evidence of widespread exploitation. Linda and Robert's case became Exhibit A in demonstrating how easily current systems could be manipulated. The legislation that followed, dubbed the Military Family Protection Act, closed numerous loopholes. It required additional verification for financial transactions involving deployed service members, established criminal penalties for exploitation, and funded support services for victims. But laws alone weren't enough. We needed cultural change. I began speaking at bases across the country, sharing not just my story, but practical strategies for protection. The message was always the same: trust but verify, prepare for contingencies, and never assume family bonds trump greed. One speech at Fort Bragg stands out. A young private approached afterward, tears in his eyes. "My mom's been asking for power of attorney," he said. "Says she needs it to pay my bills while I'm gone. Something felt off, but I thought I was being paranoid. I spent an hour with him, reviewing documents, setting up safeguards. 2 months later, he emailed from Afghanistan. His mother had attempted to sell his car and access his deployment bonuses. The protections we'd established caught everything. You saved my future," he wrote. These individual victories mattered more than any courtroom win. Each service member protected was a family preserved, a future secured. The ripple effects extended beyond finance into mental health, unit cohesion, and mission readiness. Meanwhile, the legal case against Linda, Robert, and their network expanded. Wheeler, the consultant, faced federal charges for conspiracy to commit fraud. His client list read like a who's who of military exploitation. We discovered judges who'd rubber-stamped guardianship papers, lawyers who'd facilitated fraudulent transfers, and even medical professionals who provided false psychiatric evaluations. The trial became a national spectacle. Linda and Robert, once so confident in their scheme, appeared diminished in court. Their defense attorney attempted to paint them as concerned parents trying to protect a troubled daughter from an unstable marriage. The strategy collapsed under the weight of evidence. Wheeler proved more challenging. He'd covered his tracks well, using encrypted communications and offshore accounts. But forensic accountants traced money flows, digital experts recovered deleted files, and cooperating witnesses provided crucial testimony. The turning point came when Jessica took the stand. Her testimony demolished her parents' defense, while implicating Wheeler in the broader conspiracy. She detailed how they'd groomed her from childhood to target successful men, how they'd orchestrated every aspect of our relationship, and how Wheeler had provided step-by-step instructions for the fraud. I could have been angry at her revelation. Instead, I felt pity. She'd been a tool in her parents' scheme since birth, never knowing genuine relationships, never understanding trust or love. Her therapy had revealed layers of manipulation that bordered on psychological abuse. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Linda and Robert received 5 years each, plus restitution. Wheeler got 15 years federal time, but more importantly, the case established precedent for prosecuting military family fraud as a serious federal crime. In the aftermath, I focused on building rather than dwelling on the past. The Deployment Defense Project grew into a national organization. We partnered with banks to create special protections for military accounts, worked with tech companies to develop security apps, and established a 24/7 hotline for service members facing exploitation. Our success attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Private foundations offered funding, tech entrepreneurs volunteered expertise. Even some celebrities who'd served in the military became advocates. What started in my living room became a movement. The most meaningful partnership came from the veterans of foreign wars. They'd long recognized family exploitation as a hidden epidemic, but lacked resources to address it comprehensively. Together, we created programs that reached from new recruits to retired generals. 5 years on, the landscape has changed dramatically. Military family fraud still exists, but it's no longer easy or consequence-free. Service members deploy with better protections, clearer protocols, and rapid response systems. Banks flag suspicious activity automatically. Legal services stand ready to intervene. But the personal journey mattered as much as the public victory. Learning to trust again took time. Sarah understood this intuitively. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared experience. When I finally proposed, it was with a prenup that protected both of us, not from distrust, but from wisdom. Our wedding was small but meaningful. My unit attended, in dress uniforms. Veterans from our support groups came to celebrate. Even Detective Morrison, who'd helped that crucial day, stood as a witness. The ceremony took place in the backyard of the house they'd tried to steal, now transformed into a garden of resilience. Rachel, my neighbor, made a toast that captured the essence of our journey. To Michael, who turned betrayal into protection, victimhood into advocacy, and a house into a fortress of hope for others. May your story continue to shield those who shield us. Today, the security cameras still record, but they document joy more often than threats. The filing cabinet holds not just protective documents, but thank you letters from service members we've helped. The house stands not as a symbol of what I defended, but what I built afterward. Sometimes I receive updates about Linda and Robert. They're out of prison now, living quietly in a small apartment, their dreams of wealth through deception thoroughly crushed. Wheeler remains incarcerated, his network dismantled, his guides removed from the internet. Jessica found her own path to redemption. She works as a counselor specializing in family trauma, helping others escape toxic relationships. We don't communicate often, but I respect her efforts to break the cycle. The American flag still flies outside, joined now by a second flag bearing the emblem of the Deployment Defense Project. Together, they represent service and protection, duty and vigilance. Every morning, I raise them with the same precision I learned in basic training, a ritual that connects past to present to future. My office walls display not military medals, but letters from families saved from fraud. Each one represents a disaster averted, a future preserved. They remind me that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons, but with wisdom, not against foreign enemies, but domestic predators. The consulting work I do now feels like a natural extension of military service. Teaching, financial self-defense, establishing security protocols, advocating for stronger protections. It's all part of the same mission, protecting those who protect us. Recently, a Hollywood producer approached me about turning the story into a film. I declined. This isn't entertainment, it's education. Instead, we produced a documentary series distributed free to military bases worldwide. Real stories, real solutions, real protection. The young soldiers I briefed today are different from my generation. They're more aware of potential threats, more prepared for deployment challenges. But human nature doesn't change. Greed, opportunity, and vulnerability still create perfect storms of exploitation. That's why the work continues. Every deployment cycle brings new challenges, new schemes, new variations on old themes. We adapt, evolve, and overcome. The same skills that make us effective in combat, assessment, planning, execution, serve us in this different kind of warfare. Master Sergeant Reynolds retired last year. At his ceremony, he pulled me aside. "You did good, Torres." Turned your pain into purpose. That's the warrior way. His words meant more than any official commendation. Sarah and I are expecting our first child now. A daughter. We've already established her college fund, protected by trusts and monitoring systems. That would make Fort Knox jealous, not because we're paranoid, but because we're prepared. The nursery occupies what was once Jessica's craft room. Sometimes I pause in the doorway, marveling at how spaces transform, how pain gives way to promise. The security camera in the hallway captures these moments too. Not threats, but hope. Our daughter will grow up understanding both trust and verification, both love and boundaries. She'll know her father's story not as a tale of victimhood, but as a lesson in resilience. She'll understand that true security comes not from locks and cameras, but from character and preparation. The beach house in Florida, the one from the viral story that started it all, was never mine. That was someone else's battle, someone else's victory. But their story inspired others to share theirs, creating a chorus of voices demanding change. My battle was here, in the desert heat of Arizona, in a house that became both battleground and sanctuary. The principles were the same: prepare, protect, persevere. The enemy was familiar, those who mistake trust for weakness, absence for opportunity, but the victory belongs to all of us who faced similar battles. Every service member who returned to find their life intact because of protections we established. Every family saved from financial ruin. Every would-be predator who thought twice because the consequences became real. The sun sets over Scottsdale as I write this, painting the sky in colors that remind me of distant horizons. of places where I served, of sacrifices made by so many. The house stands solid against the twilight, no longer just my home, but a symbol of what we can protect when we stand together. Tomorrow, I'll brief another group of deploying soldiers. I'll show them the videos, share the strategies, arm them with knowledge. I'll tell them what I wish someone had told me, that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones we never expect, but with preparation and vigilance, we can defeat them too. The flag will rise again at dawn, as it has every day since I returned, and with it rises the continued commitment to ensure that no service member faces alone what I faced, that no family suffers what mine might have, that no house falls to those who would steal from heroes. This is my watch now. Not in distant lands, but here at home, protecting those who protect us all. And I will stand this watch until every deploying service member can leave with confidence, knowing their home front is as secure as the front lines they're heading to defend. 10 years have passed since that fateful day in my living room. The Deployment Defense Project has grown beyond anything I could have imagined, protecting thousands of service members across all branches. Our annual conference draws military leaders, financial experts, and legal professionals from around the world. But it's the quiet victories that matter most. Last week, I received a call from a young airman stationed in Germany. His voice trembled as he described discovering his uncle had attempted to refinance his home using forged documents. Thanks to our early warning system, the bank caught it immediately. "Sir," he said, "I'm calling to thank you. Without your protocols, I'd have lost everything." These calls come regularly now. Each one reinforces why we do this work. The ripple effects extend far beyond individual cases. Unit cohesion improves when soldiers aren't distracted by home-front crises. Mission readiness increases when financial security allows focus on duty. Mental health outcomes improve when betrayal doesn't compound the stress of deployment. Sarah and I established the Military Family Trust Foundation, focusing on preventive education. We developed age-appropriate curricula for military children, teaching them about financial boundaries and family dynamics. Our daughter Eleanor, now 8, helps create content for kids her age. She understands that protecting what matters starts with awareness. The Foundation's crown jewel is the Guardian Angel program. Retired service members volunteer as financial mentors for deploying troops. They review documents, monitor accounts, and serve as stateside advocates. Many are fraud survivors themselves, turning their pain into protective action. One guardian angel, retired Navy Commander Patricia Wong, stopped 7 different exploitation attempts last year alone. "I lost my retirement savings to a nephew's investment scheme," she told our volunteers. "Now I make sure no sailor under my watch faces the same fate." Our legal victories continue to set precedents. The Supreme Court recently upheld enhanced penalties for crimes against deployed service members, citing our amicus brief. Justice Martinez, herself a military spouse, wrote, "Those who serve abroad must know their homes remain sanctuaries, not targets." The technology we've developed has applications beyond military use. Banks now employ our algorithms to detect elder financial abuse. Law enforcement uses our investigation protocols for family fraud cases. What began as self-defense has become a shield for vulnerable populations everywhere. I still live in the Scottsdale house, though it's transformed beyond recognition. The security system remains, but now it's a testing ground for new protective technologies. Military families visit to learn about home security. document protection, and digital safety. Elena calls it the fortress of learning. Jessica's path to redemption took an unexpected turn. She earned a law degree specializing in financial crimes and now prosecutes cases of military exploitation. We crossed paths at a conference where she presented on identifying grooming tactics used by financial predators. Her insight into manipulative family dynamics proved invaluable. I was both victim and perpetrator, she told the audience, raised to see relationships as transactions, trained to exploit trust. Breaking free required recognizing that pattern. Now I help others see the warning signs. Her presentation included a recorded conversation with her parents from prison. They remained unrepentant, still viewing their actions as justified. The recording served as a powerful teaching tool about the mindset of financial predators. Linda and Robert's story didn't end with their release. They attempted to restart their schemes using false identities, targeting elderly veterans this time. Our network detected the pattern within weeks. They're currently serving extended sentences, their legacy one of caution rather than success. Wheeler's case led to broader investigations of professional exploitation networks. The FBI discovered connections to organized crime, money laundering, and identity theft rings. Our military focus had uncovered a web of criminal enterprise targeting vulnerable populations across society. The reforms we advocated for changed military policy fundamentally. Pre-deployment briefings now include comprehensive asset protection, training. Power of attorney documents require additional authentication. Financial institutions must verify deployment status before major transactions. The system isn't perfect, but it's far more robust. International military forces adopted our protocols. The British Armed Forces established their own version of the Deployment Defence Project. Australian, Canadian, and NATO allies implemented similar protections. Military exploitation became recognized as a global issue requiring coordinated response. Our work attracted academic interest. Universities now offer courses on military, family financial security. Researchers study the psychology of family fraud. Sociologists examine how deployment creates unique vulnerabilities. The knowledge base grows constantly, improving our protective strategies. I earned a doctorate in criminal justice, focusing my dissertation on systematic exploitation of military families. The research revealed patterns dating back to the Civil War. Every major conflict created opportunities for predators. What changed was our ability to fight back effectively. The Deployment Defense Project headquarters occupies a building in Phoenix, symbolically located between military bases and financial districts. Our staff includes veterans, legal experts, financial advisors, and reformed fraudsters who provide insight into criminal thinking. The diversity of perspective strengthens our approach. Technology remains crucial to our mission. We developed an app that allows deployed service members to monitor their assets in real time. Artificial intelligence flags suspicious activity. Blockchain technology secures important documents. Virtual reality training helps families recognize manipulation tactics. But human connections matter most. Our peer support network connects fraud survivors for mutual healing. Monthly meetings blend practical advice with emotional support. Many participants become advocates themselves, spreading awareness through their communities. The annual Valor Guard Awards recognize individuals and organizations protecting military families. Recipients include the bank teller who questioned suspicious withdrawals, the neighbor who reported concerning activity, the teacher who noticed signs of family financial stress. Heroes come in many forms. Elena's school project on family financial safety won a national competition. She interviewed dozens of military kids about their experiences. Her conclusion: protection isn't about being scared. It's about being smart. The wisdom of children often surpasses that of adults. We establish scholarships for military dependents studying criminal justice, finance, or psychology. Recipients commit to working in military family protection for at least 2 years post-graduation. The program creates a pipeline of dedicated professionals. Our media presence evolved from crisis response to proactive education. The podcast, Secure the Home Front, reaches millions monthly. Social media campaigns teach recognition and response skills. Documentary series explore different aspects of military exploitation. Corporate partnerships expanded our reach. Insurance. Companies offer specialized policies for deploying service members. Tech firms provide discounted security services. Banks created military-specific fraud protection programs. The private sector recognized both moral obligation and business opportunity. Legislative advocacy remains central. We helped pass laws in all 50 states enhancing protections for military families. Federal legislation established mandatory reporting requirements for suspected exploitation. The legal landscape transformed from indifference to active protection. International cooperation led to treaties addressing cross-border military fraud. Deployment no longer creates jurisdictional gaps for criminals to exploit. Global databases track known predators. Interpol established a military family protection unit. The house where it all began stands as more than a museum. It's a living laboratory where we test new security measures, train advocates, and welcome those seeking help. The walls that once witnessed betrayal now echo with stories of resilience and recovery. Master Sergeant Reynolds passed away last year. His funeral brought together hundreds whose lives he'd touched. His final words to me: "You turned a single battle into a war for justice. That's the legacy that matters." We named our crisis response center in his honor. Sarah and I celebrated our 9th anniversary by establishing an endowment for military spouse education. Too many partners lack financial literacy, making them vulnerable to exploitation. Knowledge remains the best defense against predation. Our second child, Marcus, arrived 3 years ago. Named for both my uncle and the prosecutor who helped convict Linda and Robert, he represents continuity of purpose. Both children understand their role as protectors of military families. The security cameras captured a moment last month that encapsulated our journey. Elena was teaching Marcus about the alarm system. "This keeps bad people out," she explained, "but being good to others keeps them from wanting to hurt us in the first place." Rachel, now in her 80s, still lives next door. She volunteers. As a neighborhood watch coordinator, her detective instincts sharp as ever. "Retirement's overrated," she says. "Protecting good people gives life meaning." The annual report shows our impact. 50,000 service members protected, $2 billion in attempted fraud prevented, 1,000 convictions secured, countless families preserved. Numbers tell part of the story, but the real measure lies in lives unchanged. By crisis, we're developing virtual reality simulations for deployment preparation. Service members experience potential fraud scenarios, learning to recognize and respond to threats. The technology transforms abstract warnings into visceral understanding. International expansion continues. We opened offices in Seoul, Tokyo, and Berlin. Each location adapts our model to local culture while maintaining core principles. Protection transcends borders when values align. The next frontier involves artificial intelligence, predicting exploitation attempts before they occur. Patterns of behavior, financial anomalies, and communication changes create early warning signatures. Prevention beats intervention every time. Climate change creates new deployment patterns, requiring adaptive protection strategies. Natural disasters increase vulnerability. Economic instability breeds desperation. Our models evolve constantly to meet emerging threats. Quantum computing promises unprecedented security for military families. Unbreakable encryption, instantaneous threat detection, predictive analytics. The future of protection exceeds current imagination. We partner with tech innovators to stay ahead of criminal evolution. The garden where Sarah and I married hosts. Monthly gatherings for military families. Children play while parents share experiences and strategies. Community building prevents isolation that predators exploit. Connection creates protection. My morning routine includes reviewing overnight alerts from our global monitoring center. Each notification represents a family potentially saved from disaster. The work never ends, but neither does the satisfaction of service. Elena asked recently why I still work so hard when we've already won. I explained that victory requires vigilance. Every generation faces new threats. Every deployment creates fresh vulnerabilities. Protection is a practice, not a destination. The flag still flies outside, joined now by flags from every nation we serve. They ripple in the desert wind, symbols of shared commitment to those who sacrifice for others. The house stands sentinel, transformed from crime scene to command center. As sunset approaches, I walk the perimeter one final time, not from paranoia, but from habit born of purpose. The cameras record another peaceful day, another family protected, another victory in the ongoing campaign for justice. Tomorrow brings new challenges. A congressional hearing on emerging threats, a training session for deploying units, a strategy meeting on quantum security. The mission continues, evolving but eternal. The phone rings. Another service member. Seeking help. I answer with the same words that began this journey. This is Michael Torres. How can I protect what matters to you? The conversation begins. Another link in the chain of protection we've forged from betrayal's bitter metal. In the quiet moments between calls, I remember that day in Brussels when everything changed. The shock, the rage, the determination to fight back. What I couldn't know then was how one man's stand would become a movement, how personal violation would birth systemic protection. The true measure of victory isn't in the enemies defeated, but in the families who never face such battles. Every soldier who deploys with confidence, every spouse who sleeps securely, every child whose future remains intact. These are the triumphs that matter. As night falls over Scottsdale, the security lights activate automatically. Inside, Elena helps Marcus with homework while Sarah reviews tomorrow's briefing materials. The scene appears ordinary, domestic, peaceful. But beneath the surface lies vigilance honed by experience, protection powered by purpose. This is what winning looks like, not a single dramatic moment, but countless quiet ones. Families intact, futures secured, trust preserved. the house that stood witness to betrayal, now shelters hope for thousands who will never know its story but benefit from its lessons. The circle completes but never closes. Each resolution opens new chapters of service. Each victory creates responsibility for continued vigilance. The watch continues, passed from hand to hand, generation to generation, an unbroken chain of protection. For those who protect us all. In the end, they didn't just fail to take my house, they gave me a mission that transformed countless lives. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in betrayal's bitter paper. You just have to be strong enough to unwrap them, and wise enough to share what you find inside. As the sun rose over the Arizona desert, I prepared for what would be my last congressional testimony. 20 years of advocacy had led to this moment. The Military Family Financial Protection Act was finally up for a vote. The bill represented everything we'd fought for. Comprehensive protections that would make exploitation of service members a federal crime with mandatory sentences. The committee room buzzed with tension. Lobbyists from banking and real estate industries had fought hard against the legislation, claiming it would create unnecessary bureaucracy. But we had something more powerful than their money. We had stories, evidence, and an army of veterans who refused to let another generation suffer. Senator Williams opened the hearing. Mr. Torres, you've dedicated 2 decades to this cause. Why should Congress pass this bill now? I stood, my old uniform pressed and decorated with ribbons I'd earned not just in combat, but in this different kind of warfare. Senator, last week, a 19-year-old private at Fort Benning discovered his stepfather had drained his combat pay while he was in basic training. 3 days ago, a Navy pilot learned her sister sold her condo using forged documents. Yesterday, an Army surgeon found his practice had been transferred to his ex-wife's boyfriend through fraudulent paperwork. The room fell silent as I continued. These aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a system that treats our service members' trust as weakness. This bill doesn't just protect assets, it protects the very foundation of military readiness. Routine. The testimony lasted 3 hours. Veterans from every branch shared their experiences. Financial experts presented data showing the correlation between home front security and combat effectiveness. Military psychologists explained how financial betrayal compounds PTSD and affects mission performance. But the turning point came when General Patricia Reeves, now chair of the Joint Chiefs, took the stand. I lost my family's savings to fraud. During my first deployment, she revealed, shocking the room. If Michael Torres hadn't created the systems we now use, I might not be here today. This isn't just about money, it's about national security. The bill passed unanimously. That evening, Sarah and I hosted a celebration at the Phoenix headquarters. The building, once a modest office, had grown into a campus featuring training facilities, a crisis center, and research labs. Veterans, advocates, and families filled the courtyard, sharing stories of survival and triumph. Elena, now 18 and heading to West Point, addressed the crowd. My father taught me that strength isn't just about fighting enemies abroad. It's about protecting what matters at home. Every cadet in my class will learn these lessons before their first deployment. Marcus, 15 and already developing security apps for military families, demonstrated his latest creation, an AI system that predicted exploitation attempts with 97% accuracy. The code is open source, he announced, because protection should be free for those who serve. The next morning brought unexpected news. The International Criminal Court had issued warrants for a network of fraudsters targeting NATO forces. Our evidence had exposed connections between military exploitation and larger criminal enterprises. The investigation spanned 12 countries and implicated corrupt officials, fake charities, and international money laundering operations. I flew to The Hague to testify, carrying hard drives filled with 20 years of documentation. The tribunal lasted months, resulting in the largest conviction of military fraudsters in history. More importantly, it established international precedent for prosecuting these crimes as violations of the laws of war. Returning home, I found our movement had evolved beyond anything I'd imagined. Military academies worldwide taught our protocols. A standard curriculum, financial institutions competed to offer the most secure services for service members. Technology companies donated resources to develop new protective tools. The Deployment Defense Project merged with similar organizations. Globally, creating the International Alliance for Military Family Protection. Our annual budget exceeded $100 million, all from donations and grants. We employed thousands of veterans, turning their experience into expertise that protected others. But success brought new challenges. Sophisticated criminals adapted their methods, using deepfakes and quantum hacking to attempt new forms of fraud. We responded by partnering with cybersecurity firms and quantum computing labs. The arms race between protectors and predators never ends. It only evolves. Sarah launched the Military Spouse Financial Empowerment Initiative, recognizing that education remained our best defense. The program reached remote bases through virtual reality classrooms, teaching complex financial concepts through immersive experiences. Graduation rates exceeded 90%, with participants reporting increased confidence in managing family finances. On the 15th anniversary of the original confrontation, Jessica reached out with a proposal. She'd been working with rehabilitated financial criminals to understand their methods and motivations. We need to think like predators to catch in them, she explained. Her insights led to predictive models that identified potential fraudsters before they struck. The collaboration felt surreal. The woman who'd once betrayed me, now helping protect others from similar fates. But redemption takes many forms, and her expertise proved invaluable. We established the Center for Financial Predator Research, studying the psychology of exploitation to better prevent it. Linda and Robert died in prison, unrepentant to the end. Their legacy lived on not in successful schemes, but in the protections. Their actions inspired. Every law, every protocol, every life saved stood as testament to the power of turning victimhood into victory. The 20th anniversary brought reflection and renewal. We'd protected over 1 million service members, prevented $50 billion in fraud, and secured thousands of convictions. But numbers only told part of the story. The real impact lay in the emails, letters, and calls from families who never experienced crisis because our systems worked. "Dear Mr. Torres," one letter read, "I deployed to Syria knowing my family was safe. Your protocols caught 3 attempted frauds before they could succeed. My children still have their college funds. My wife still has our home. I could focus on my mission because you secured my home front. Thank you for watching our 6. The house in Scottsdale remained our anchor, though technology had transformed it into something from science fiction. Quantum sensors detected any unauthorized approach. AI systems monitored global threats in real time. But amid all the technology, simple things endured. Family dinners, birthday parties, quiet evenings on the porch watching sunsets. Elena graduated from West Point with honors, her thesis on predictive security systems already being implemented across the Department of Defense. She chose military intelligence, saying, "I want to protect the protectors like Dad did." Her first assignment took her to Cyber Command, where she developed next-generation defense systems. Marcus earned early admission to MIT, focusing on quantum cryptography for military applications. His high school project, an unhackable communication system for deployed families, won international awards and drew interest from tech giants. He chose to keep the patent public, ensuring the technology remained accessible to all service members. The garden where we'd married hosted weddings for countless military couples who'd met through our support groups. Each ceremony reinforced the message that trust could be rebuilt, love could flourish after betrayal, and vigilance need not preclude vulnerability. As retirement approached, I faced a choice: step back and enjoy the fruits of our labor, or evolve the mission for new challenges. The decision came during a briefing on emerging threats. Climate change was creating new deployment patterns. Space. Force personnel faced unique vulnerabilities. Cyber warfare blurred lines between military and civilian targets. We launched Project Horizon, preparing protections for the next century of military service. Space-based assets required new security protocols. Lunar and Martian deployments would create unprecedented challenges. We partnered with aerospace companies to develop financial systems that could function across planets. The work attracted visionaries from every field. Physicists helped design quantum-encrypted financial networks. Psychologists developed AI, therapists for families dealing with extreme separation. Legal scholars crafted frameworks for interplanetary property rights. Sarah spearheaded the Global Military Family Council, uniting protection efforts across allied nations. Monthly summits brought together experts from dozens of countries, sharing strategies and coordinating responses to emerging threats. The Council's influence extended beyond military matters, shaping international policy on family protection. On my 60th birthday, the President awarded me the Medal of Freedom. The citation read, "For transforming personal tragedy into global triumph, for protecting those who protect us, and for proving that one person's stand against injustice can change the world." The ceremony brought together thousands whose lives we'd touched. Service members, families, advocates, and even former adversaries who'd reformed their ways. Jessica gave a speech about redemption and responsibility. Elena and Marcus unveiled plans for an orbital protection network that would monitor threats from space. But the most meaningful moment came privately afterward. A young sergeant approached with his daughter. "Sir," he said, "I deployed 3 times without worry because of what you built. My little girl never knew fear because you knew vigilance. How do we ever thank you for that?" I knelt to the child's level. "You grow up strong and smart," I told her. "You protect others like we protected you. That's all the thanks anyone needs." As we entered our 3rd decade of service, the mission expanded again. Artificial intelligence threatened new forms of identity theft. Genetic engineering raised questions about biological property rights. Brain-computer interfaces created vulnerabilities we'd never imagined. We established the future. Threats Division, staffed by scientists, ethicists, and security experts. Their mandate: anticipate exploitation methods that didn't yet exist, and create defenses against them. Science fiction became our planning document. The original security cameras in the Scottsdale house now seemed quaint compared to our quantum surveillance networks, but I kept them functional, reminders of where we started. Sometimes the old ways still caught what new technology missed. Elena took over as executive director of the Deployment Defense Project, bringing fresh perspective and energy. Her first initiative connected military children worldwide through secure virtual networks, creating support systems that transcended borders and time zones. Marcus revolutionized financial security with his quantum blockchain system, making traditional fraud mathematically impossible. Banks worldwide adopted the technology, protecting not just military families, but all vulnerable populations. Sarah and I began writing our memoirs, not as celebration, but as cautionary tales for future generations. Each chapter reinforced the theme: vigilance without paranoia, protection without isolation, strength through community. The final chapter remained unwritten. New threats emerged daily. New protectors rose to meet them. The cycle continued, as it must. But now no service member deployed alone. Behind each stood an army of advocates, a fortress of technology, and the hard-won wisdom of those who'd fought this battle before. As sunset painted the desert sky, I stood on the porch where it all began. The flag still flew, joined now by banners from every organization we'd inspired. Children played in the yard, safe in the knowledge that their parents' service wouldn't cost them their futures. Sarah joined me, her hand finding mine after all these years. "Any regrets?" she asked. I thought of the journey from betrayal to in triumph, from victim to protector, from one man's stand to a global movement. "Only that we couldn't start sooner," I replied. "Think of how many we could have saved." "Think of how many you did save," she countered, "and how many more will be protected by what you built." The security system chimed softly. Not a threat, just Elena and Marcus arriving for dinner. 3 generations gathered around the table. Where conspirators once plotted, now it hosted strategy sessions for protecting the next generation of warriors. As we ate, Marcus shared news of a breakthrough in predictive AI. Elena described new training protocols for Space Force families. The conversation flowed easily between technical details and family matters, between global challenges and personal victories. Later, reviewing the day's security logs, I found 0 threats detected, not because they didn't exist, but because our systems caught them before they could materialize. Prevention had become so effective that protection appeared effortless. But I knew better. Knew that somewhere someone was planning new ways to exploit trust. Knew that vigilance could never sleep. Knew that the price of security was eternal readiness. The phone rang. A young lieutenant facing her first deployment, worried about leaving her elderly parents vulnerable. I took the call, as I had thousands before, offering guidance, activating protocols, ensuring another family's safety. "This is Michael Torres," I said, the same words I'd spoken that first day. "Let's make sure you can focus on your mission while we protect what matters at home." The conversation lasted an hour. By its end, another family had joined our protective network. Another soldier could deploy with confidence. Another potential tragedy had been averted before it began. As midnight approached, I made my final rounds, checked the systems, reviewed the alerts, confirmed that all was secure. The habits of decades died hard, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The house stood silent, a sentinel in the desert night. But it was no longer just a house. It was a symbol, a headquarters, a monument to the power of refusing to be a victim. From this spot we'd launched a revolution in military family protection that circled the globe and reached toward the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new opportunities to protect and serve. But tonight, in the quiet darkness, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. We'd turned the worst day of my life into the best thing I'd ever done. The security cameras recorded nothing but peace. The motion sensors detected only desert wildlife. The quantum networks hummed with protective algorithms. All was well on the home front, as it should be for those who guard our freedoms. I climbed the stairs to bed, passing photos that chronicled our journey, from that first confrontation to international tribunals, from personal vendetta to global mission, from betrayal to triumph. Sarah was already asleep, her breathing steady and peaceful. I watched her for a moment, grateful for the partner who'd helped turn pain into purpose. Then I lay down beside her, setting my phone to wake me for the 0500 security briefing. The last thought before sleep wasn't of victories won or battles fought. It was of the young sergeant and his daughter, of all the families who'd never know the fear I'd faced. That was the true measure of success, not in threats defeated, but in crises prevented. The flag would rise again at dawn. The mission would continue. The watch would never end. But for now, in the quiet darkness of a house that had witnessed both betrayal and triumph, all was secure, and that was enough. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.